Welcome to the Front 7 podcast right here on YouTube. I am your host, Money Mike, here to bring you the latest in free agency news as we are inching closer and closer. I mean, literally, if you think about this, folks, today is March 21st. The draft begins April 26th. We are just a little over a month away from seeing the next great young talent to come into the league and where they're going to be playing their first 4 or 5 years of their career. And boy, has free agency changed the draft so much. Yes, you have the rumors out there of who the teams are like and who they're interested in. The hot rumor going around right now is Jalen Ramsey is the favorite to actually go number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans instead of Laramie Tunsil, in which if that happened, that would cause a big ripple effect in the draft, because then you would have Cleveland, who by all means it looks like going quarterback, because I don't think even if they brought in RG3, it would stop them from bringing in Carson Wentz at number 2. Chargers would just end up with the gift at number 3 with Laramie Tunsil to fix that offensive line. I mean, they re-signed Joseph Barksdale, who was the only healthy offensive lineman that they had last year. So drafting Tunsil would allow them to move on from King Dunlap and get Tunsil in a left tackle for the next decade or so. And then Phillip Rivers can be happy. He has some new protection, and then whoever their new franchise quarterback is going to be in the near future. And then that would open up a little ripple effect, because Dallas, as we know, they want to get some pass rush. Jacksonville, they've signed pretty much every positional need that I can see they have done in free agency. They got Malik Jackson to be a pass rusher that they desperately needed, with Dante Fowler coming back after being redshirted with the torn ACL. They brought in Prince Amikamura on a 1-year deal, which is great because it allows him to establish himself and get a big payday next March. And for Jacksonville, they're going to be one of the teams that are going to be one to watch. It does seem they're unhappy with Luke Jekyll. They did bring in Steelers offensive tackle Kelvin Beachum. Who knows if that's what happens there. Apparently the reports say they're supposed to be competing for left tackle. I mean, they already invested some money into Jeremy Parnell at right tackle. They still don't have a center yet. Stefan Wisniewski has yet to be signed, so maybe he comes back on a 1-year deal. From that point, then you have the Ravens at 6, the 49ers at 7, the Philadelphia Eagles now at 8. But basically, if Ramsey goes number 1, there's going to be this big ripple effect that a lot of experts out there that did not see coming. I think the entire consensus was Tunsil, Wentz, and San Diego would take Jalen Ramsey, with the Cowboys taking Joey Bosa, with Jacksonville taking Hargraves or maybe DeForest Buckner, and then the Ravens kind of having whoever Jacksonville didn't take. You know, if Jacksonville took Buckner, Ravens would take Hargraves. If Jaguars took Hargraves, the Ravens would have Buckner, and then Jared Goff would be number 7 to the 49ers. So it was actually a pretty predictable draft if things went the way that it was expected to be. And then free agency happened, folks. But the big trade that everybody is talking about, but the New England Patriots, folks. I will say this year in, year out. Let's put everything aside. Spygate, Deflategate. The Patriots know when to get rid of players. Belichick likes to get rid of players before they start their decline and let other teams get that player in their decline. Even though it's quite shocking that Chandler Jones, one of the young pass rushers in the league, was traded to Arizona in a deal that also saw Jonathan Cooper go to New England from Arizona. So what we had here was Arizona, they coveted a pass rush, and this is what from what Adam Schefter said, was that Arizona coveted a pass rush. They went and got Chandler Jones. The Pats coveted Jonathan Cooper. So the Pats went out and got Jonathan Cooper to keep Tom Brady protected. And they only had to give up a second-round pick. So now, the Patriots, who don't have a first-round pick because of Deflategate, now have 2 second-round picks at their disposal. And could they use those 2 picks to jump into the first round? Who knows? We'll have to see what happens. But Chandler Jones to the Arizona Cardinals is going to be huge. Obviously, in New England, defensive end, he is going to transition to an outside linebacker in Arizona. Arizona now has that young, premium pass rusher needed in order to lock up a defense. I think they saw from the game against Green Bay and against the Carolina Panthers where they lacked a pass rush that could get to Cam Newton and could get to Aaron Rodgers consistently. If they could have done that to Aaron Rodgers, that Hail Mary would not have happened. Overtime would not have happened. Maybe they're a little bit more competitive in the NFC Championship game if they could get to Cam Newton. We saw the Broncos get to Cam Newton consistently in the Super Bowl. The Panthers' offensive line could not stop Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and that Denver defense. So could you imagine if Chandler Jones was in Arizona at the time of the NFC Championship game? It might have been a different story. It might be a different story this year, now that Arizona has bolstered their pass rush. So we'll have to see what happens there, but now New England has 2 second-round picks in next month's draft. And for a lot of folks, you have to wonder, is that even a good thing, considering the history of the second-round picks used by Bill Belichick lately? So you have to wonder, what's going to happen? Are the Patriots going to use those 2 first-round picks or second-round picks and maybe go into the first round, is what I was trying to say? Or do they stay put and grab 2 new young players? I mean, we saw them, they added a former Bears and former Rams players as of late as well. They added Chris Long, formerly of the Rams, to come in and replace Chandler Jones. And they added Shea McLean, linebacker from the Bears. And as you see, this is just typical Bill Belichick. Make some trades that are first seen as shocking, and then it's kind of like, okay, it worked out in the end. A lot of people questioned the Logan Mankins trade, and then that worked out. Logan Mankins, he retired this year, leaving a big hole for Tampa Bay to fill in that line. Because Bill Belichick likes to do things differently, and I'm very surprised most teams have not figured out that spending in free agency is not the way to go. Even though the Denver Broncos have shown that you can do that and win a Super Bowl, and I think that's what Jacksonville is trying to do. They went out and did exactly what Denver did almost a couple years ago after the Super Bowl loss. They added a pass rusher in Malik Jackson. The Broncos added DeMarcus Ware, who was cut from the Cowboys. They added T.J. Ward, who was a free agent from the Browns. The Jacksonville Jaguars added another Brown free agent safety in Tayshaun Gibson. Now it seems maybe free agency is kind of almost maybe being the key to success. But yet you still see the consistent contenders just sit back in free agency and they still contend each year. So for some teams, spending in free agency works. Other teams, it just doesn't work, and just building through the draft works. And they've also added Martellus Bennett to go with Rob Gronkowski. So now Tom Brady has another weapon at his disposal like he needs it. Now let's move on to another team that's not the Patriots. The Minnesota Vikings signed right tackle Andre Smith. They re-signed Terrence Newman and defensive end Justin Tuitu. Now, the Andre Smith signing I like. I think they needed a veteran presence in there on that right side of the line. I still think they're going to have to look eventually at a left tackle replacement for Matt Khalil. Chris Johnson is back in Arizona on a 1-year deal, citing that he wanted to play for Bruce Arians and he did not want to play for anybody else. And speaking of of the offensive line and left tackles, the Denver Broncos have now left Seattle with a big hole to fill with Russell Okung, who has now become their left tackle, with Ryan Clady reportedly on the trade block. And I have to say, this is why players do not represent themselves in free agency. This contract that was given to Okung was the most team-friendly contract that I have ever seen in recent years. I mean, this deal on the surface, it looks like a 5-year deal, but in reality, it's really a 1-year deal, 4-year team option. Alright, contract details are this. It's a 1-year deal worth $5 million with a team option of 4 years. $12 million per year. Essentially, folks, this is going to be a 1-year deal. Okung is going to come in, be a 1-year servant left tackle, and then that's pretty much it. Because I cannot see Denver willing to pay him $12 million a year, especially if Russell Okung is not over his injuries and is still injury prone. Now, here's the best part about it. Okung's contract has no guaranteed money. No guaranteed money at all in this deal. This is why players do not represent themselves in free agency. Russell Okung just pretty much shortchanged himself out of more money by being his own agent in this case. I mean, that's about as team-friendly as you're going to get. And essentially, it's a 1-year deal, but maybe the Broncos look at a 2-3 year pact. Who knows? We'll have to see what happens with that. The Cleveland Browns have been very, very quiet on the free agent front. We've seen in years past where the Browns have been spending and it hasn't worked out. So now they're kind of getting criticism for actually not doing anything in free agency. They've allowed their top 3 players walk. Travis Benjamin, Alex Mack, Tayshaun Gibson, for big money contracts elsewhere. And it's being reported that basically all of the Browns free agents wanted to leave and go have a new team. And what makes matters worse is Adam Schefter on ESPN recently, and you can look up this clip online, where Adam Schefter said that players look at the Cleveland Browns organization as college. 4 years and done. Now, apparently somebody forgot to tell Joe Thomas this. He's on 9 years and he still has not got to that done part yet. So somebody needs to let him know that that's what the Cleveland Browns organization is. Maybe Adam Schefter can let him know that. But basically, I think if the Browns are doing what I think they're doing is, and that's basically taking a page from Ozzie Newsome's playbook in Baltimore, where Ozzie doesn't overpay for free agents. Even though it was said that the deals that Cleveland offered Alex Mack and Travis Benjamin were close to what they actually signed with the Atlanta Falcons and the San Diego Chargers. But essentially, the Browns are kind of going into a complete rebuild here with Hugh Jackson. And I'm going to have a video coming up soon on the Cleveland Browns and whether or not this rebuild is really going to work, because we've seen it. Is Hugh Jackson going to even have enough time to rebuild this team? I mean, they've been given head coaches 1 or 2 years recently. I mean, is Hugh Jackson going to have enough to rebuild? I mean, you might as well pencil them in for the first pick for 2017 in the 2017 draft. At this point, with the way that team is depleted right now of talent. They've let go of Dwayne Bowe, who was a bust. They've let go of Carlos Dansby, who didn't really live up to the hype there. I mean, they did bring in Raheem Moore to kind of help fill the void a little bit, but still, I think if Tennessee wasn't going to go Jalen Ramsey, which maybe they don't, maybe just a big rumor mill. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe Tennessee goes Joey Bosa. I mean, his brother was wearing Titans gear at Ohio State's Pro Day, so maybe that's something that's giving a little more of a hint of what to come next month. But for the most part, the Browns really have been quiet in free agency. They've signed Raheem Moore, Demario Davis to replace Carlos Dansby, Raheem Moore to replace Gibson. So they're bringing in veterans. With them going into a full rebuild, I just worry is this going to be something that they're going to stick with Hugh Jackson for a couple years and allow him to build a team in his image to where the third, fourth, and fifth year, or the fourth and fifth year, where it's like you have 3 years of rebuilding to get the team where he wants it to be. And that fourth and fifth year, is there enough progress to keep him on board going forward? That's what I want to know. Are they going to give him that time, or are they going to just rebuild, throw everything out, and then just get rid of Hugh next year, even though it's quite obvious that they're going on a full rebuild right now? The Oakland Raiders have beefed up their offensive line enough to where they brought in Kelechi Osemele, even though I really believe they overpaid him. And the Ravens should be compensated with a nice third-round compensatory pick, unless signing Eric Weddle or Ben Watson cancels it out. I don't know. The Raiders have brought back Donald Penn on a 2-year contract, so he'll be a left tackle. Kelechi is going to be a left guard. So now that left side of the Raiders line is great. Derek Carr is going to be loving that protection next year. And it's interesting, the Ravens do play the Raiders next year in Baltimore. The Ravens have signed wideout Mike Wallace to a 2-year contract. They've also brought in Eric Weddle, as I just said, and they also let go of Will Hill, who was basically suspended for 10 games. So you can see why he was let go. But the Ravens now have Mike Wallace in play, just in case, if Rashad Perriman is not ready to go yet, at least they got Mike Wallace on board as their deep threat. A lot of people like to say, oh, well, Mike Wallace disappeared in Miami, he disappeared in Minnesota. You know, when you look at Mike Wallace's success, he succeeded in Pittsburgh because of Big Ben. Big Ben was able to throw the deep ball that could essentially go with his speed, and he was a great receiver because of that. He went to Miami. Tannehill's arm is not that strong. Minnesota, same thing, not that strong. So now, and Mike Wallace even said that Joe Flacco was one of the reasons that he came to Baltimore, because Joe can throw that deep ball. He can throw that deep ball like Big Ben can. But with the bulk of free agency over with, what is now going to happen between now and the draft is going to be the question on everybody's mind, as we will see things happen leading up to the draft where players may lose their draft stock, players may move up. It's going to be interesting because right now free agency is basically done. If you follow the Ravens, if you look at teams like New England, you look at teams like Green Bay, you see these guys, they go and they sign these lower level free agents that happen to end up being a big player once and for all once the season starts. So they look like little cheap signings, but they end up being a big role into how their season shapes up. So, for the most part, free agency is done. Now we're at that lower level of free agency where it's going to be easy to overlook these signings now, but come the season, it may be a whole different story and it'll be a huge under signing. Will there be any more trades? Who knows? Will the Browns get RG3? I don't know. But I'll have more of the Cleveland Browns later this week as I will go through the Cleveland Browns quarterback history and how badly they have been either out of position to take a legit franchise quarterback, where they've missed the boat and have missed out on some big players, ended up being pretty good. Just like that Donovan McNabb guy. Yeah, I heard Donovan McNabb. He had a great career. Tim Couch, not so much. That will be later this week, either Thursday or Friday. I've been your host, Money Mike. That is the latest in free agency news. You have been listening to the Front 7 podcast right here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to my channel leading up to the draft, as I'll have much more to come as we get closer and closer to the draft. Till next time, take care.